Hey guys, and welcome to day 30 of Lent. Today we're looking at the triumphal entry through Luke's Gospel, chapter 19, verses 28 to 40. Jesus went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. As they came close as near as Bethany and Bethphage, at the place called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of the disciples on ahead. Go into the village over there, he said, and as you arrive you will find a colt tied up that nobody has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone says to you, "What are you untying it for?" you should say, "Because the master needs it." The two who were sent went off and found it, just as Jesus had said to them. They untied the colt, and its owner said to them, "Why are you untying the colt?" "Because the master needs it," they replied. They brought it to Jesus, threw their cloaks on the colt, and mounted Jesus on it. As he was going along, people kept spreading their cloaks on the road. When he came to the descent of the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began to celebrate and praise God at the tops of their voices for all of the powerful deeds that they had seen. "Welcome, welcome," with a blessing they sang. "Welcome to the King in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory on high." Some of the Pharisees from the crowd said to Jesus, "Teachers, tell your disciples to stop that." "Let me tell you," replied Jesus, "if they stayed silent, the stones would be shouting." Mile after uphill mile, it seems a long way even in a car. You wind up through the sandy hills from Jericho, the lowest point on the face of the earth, through the Judean desert, climbing all the way. Halfway up, you reach sea level. You've already climbed a long way from the Jordan Valley, and you still have to ascend a fair-sized mountain. It is almost always hot, since it seldom, if ever, rains. It's almost always dusty as well. That was the way the pilgrims came, with Jesus going on ahead, as he had planned all along. This was to be the climax of the story of his public career, of his vocation. He knew well enough what lay ahead, and had set his face to go and meet it head on. He couldn't stop announcing the kingdom, but that announcement could only come true if he now embodied in himself the things he'd been talking about. The living God was at work to heal and save, and the forces of evil and death were massed to oppose him. Like Pharaoh and the armies of Egypt trying to prevent the Israelites from leaving. But this was to be the moment of God's new Exodus, God's great Passover, and nothing could stop Jesus going ahead to celebrate it. Even when you drive rather than walk from Jericho to the top of the Mount of Olives, the sense of relief and excitement when you reach the summit is intense. At last, you exchange barren, dusty desert for lush green growth, particularly at Passover time, at the height of spring. At last, you stop climbing, you crest the summit, and there before you, glistening in the sun, is the holy city, Jerusalem itself, on its own slightly smaller hill across a narrow but deep valley. Bethany and Bethphage nestle on the Jericho side of the Mount of Olives. Once you pass them, Jerusalem comes into view at once. The end of the journey, the pilgrimage to end all pilgrimages, Passover time in the city of God. For Jesus, it's royal occasion, to be carefully planned and staged to make exactly the right point that he needed to make. The animal he chose, presumably by pre-arrangement with the owners, this wasn't the first time Jesus had been to Bethany, was a young foal, almost certainly a donkey's colt. The word Luke uses more normally mean a young horse or pony, but he knew Zechariah 9:9, the prophecy of the Messiah riding on a young donkey, and he uses the word that occurs there. Like the tomb in which Jesus would lie a week later, it had never been used before. The disciples picked up on the theme, and in a kind of instant royal celebration, they spread cloaks along the road for him. Down they go, down the steep path to Kidron Valley, and the crowd starts to sing of the great psalm of praise that pilgrims always sang on the way to Jerusalem, a song of victory, a hymn of praise to God, who defeats all foes and establishes his kingdom. Jesus will himself quote from the psalm in one of his debates in Jerusalem. He comes himself as the fulfillment of the nation's hopes, answering their longings for a king who would bring peace on earth from heaven itself. And yet the grumblers are still there. Some Pharisees going along with the crowd suddenly become anxious about what will happen if the authorities in Jerusalem think for a minute that there's a messianic demonstration going on. Jesus knows, and Luke knows, and we as readers know what awaits the Master when he gets to the city. From Jesus' point of view, this is why there is such a celebration in the first place. It is appropriate precisely because he is coming to bring God's salvation, God's great exodus, through his own Passover action on the cross. Had the crowds known this, they would have been puzzled and distressed, as indeed they soon will be. So for reflection, explore the tension between the triumphant atmosphere of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem and the underlying knowledge of his impending suffering and death. Reflect on the reactions of different groups such as the disciples, the crowd, and the Pharisees. What were the different levels of awareness and understanding regarding Jesus' mission? And imagine you are arriving at Jerusalem with Jesus. Are you going along for the trip in the hope that Jesus will fulfill some of your hopes and desires? Are you ready to sing a psalm of praise, but only as long as Jesus seems to be doing what you want? Are you ready not only to spread your cloak on the road in front of him, to do the showy and flamboyant thing, but also to follow him into trouble and adversity? Well guys, thanks for watching again, and I'll see you tomorrow.